It's already a business for the customers who have their own photovoltaic on their roof, and they can completely be independent from the grid source, let's say. So they are really benefiting. And if you see that on a much bigger scale, if more and more people have their photovoltaic and they also use it locally for their house or for their car and can also feed back from the car into their own house, if you multiply that by all the cars and houses in Europe, this is really a big impact what you can do.
Bidirectional charging could be a game changer for the energy transition and your wallet. According to a recent study by Transport and Environment, bidirectional charging has the potential to save energy providers and EV drivers in the EU over 100 billion euros within the next decade already. For you as an individual EV owner, that could translate to potential savings of 700 euros annually. But today, high public charging costs in many European countries are still making e-mobility less attractive to the broader population. So how could bidirectional charging be the solution to reverse this trend? And how could bidirectional charging help to unlock new opportunities for EV drivers and the energy system? We'll find out in this episode. Welcome to the Smartery podcast, a podcast for and with the creators of the new energy world. A world in which energy will be renewable, decentralized and digital, bringing together electricity, heat and mobility. Let us show you how we will get there and who will get us there. My guest for this episode is Michael Keller, founding member and member of the executive board and CTO of the Charging Interface Initiative, CharIN. With more than 24 years in this industry and formerly having headed the Volkswagen Group Development Coordination for Charging and Charging Infrastructure, he's got quite some experience in the topic. CharIN has become the leading global association with over 300 members dedicated to promote standards in the field of charging systems for charging EVs of all types in as many parts of the world as possible. Great to have you on the podcast. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, Sergey. Great to be here. Thank you.
Now, let's be frank. You've been in the industry for 24 years. It's a long time. I know if you're as long and when with one topic, you usually need to find new ways to be enthusiastic about it every couple of years. So now 2024, what's keeping you on the ball? What's getting you out of bed at night because you're enthusiastic about charging infrastructure? What are the topics at the moment?
When I started 24 years ago, it was just the question of battery technology, basic questions, how to make an EV work for the normal users to drive on long distances. They were the big question that time. But nowadays, it's more customer-centric in the way of how to use it, how to interact. Because the main goal why we are doing all this e-mobility topics and all the different type of cars and vehicles to be electrified is we want to be CO2 neutral with our mobility in future, because that's our aim. Yeah? That's our ultimate goal, and this is not reached yet. If you would have asked me in the beginning what are the key challenges would be, I would have still had the question about technology. But in the meantime, we know it's much more complex because you have so many different stakeholders in the whole chain from energy to vehicle to the user, which have to be aligned, which have to have digital interfaces, communication protocols which need to be globally aligned. And all these topics, even for the custom interface, so many different solutions are still there. And this all has to be more and more optimized, more and more unified for better innovativity, better user experience. So there's still a whole bunch of topics to be discussed and to be worked on, because we are not only working in CharIN for the passenger car industry, which was the beginning, absolutely clear, but in the meantime, we also have the trucks, the buses, which are electrified by having a specific standard also developed for this industry with a megawatt charging system. But also other industry like mining, we have also a big group working on that, but also aviation and marine is now going the same phase through what the automotive industry had about 10, 12 years ago.
Now, if we talk about vehicles, of course, that's huge potential. All the batteries being used as storage for a decentralized grid powered by renewables. That's the goal. At the same time, it's a huge challenge. And obviously, we only get it done if we focus on bidirectional charging. But where are we at? While we speak, it's the end of 2024. So what's the state of bidirectional charging, specifically in Europe in winter 2024-25? And how are we faring in comparison to regions such as Japan or the US?
It's a very good question, and it's not easy to answer with one answer, because the technology itself regarding a battery system, having a charger or a wall box being bidirectional, or also having some first cars being on the AC side, on the normal connector side, being able to do bidirectional charging. And also for the communication protocol, which is also in our discussion important topic. So the ISO 15118-20 communication protocol, this is also ready and published and also integrated in a lot of vehicles. But it also depends, because you are now connecting not only one directional vehicle being taking energy from the grid, the battery of the vehicle will get part of the grid and the energy system. And this is a big step for all the regulations. And this is something what's still also in Europe being in different national regulations diversified. So there's no homolog solution possible on that, but technology-wise it is. And so we are quite a good level. But then they have to look on what the different countries are doing in Europe. And that's a bit different to US or to Japan, because they have a bigger market and it's one country with one kind of just one regulation. And also we have some big pushes from the Biden administration in US with a need to be bidirectional capable for the US market. And that's also something what's not on the same level here in Europe. So technology-wise, the European companies and Europe is ready, and also there are solutions in the market, but it's more outside the technology area what has to be improved.
That you already mentioned, so it's not so much a technology question, but what is slowing down then adoption of bidirectional charging, specifically here in Europe? What are the market-related challenges or the regulatory challenges? Is it, as you said, the ununified market with all the individual countries, or?
It's not as easy as in other areas, because a lot of laws you can change or you can support by European direction or European regulation, which then will be getting a national law. In that case here, it's also that a lot of technical regulations in the grid of the different national countries are not harmonized. So they have different technical parameters which have to be achieved. Yeah? And there are already activities in Europe. So there's also ASA doing discussion about that. There are working groups in the European Commission to aligning that. But this takes time, because a lot of people and organizations have to align on a new threshold for a certain parameter, which is then European-wide accepted. And this takes time. Yeah? So this is one part of the topic. So regarding the grid technical regulations you have to comply with if you want to charge or to feed energy into the grid. And on the other hand, we have also regulations like taxes, yeah, and also like fees for grid operation and stuff like that. And there's also sometimes also tax regulations, some other regulations in the background, which need to be adopted, because they are not prepared of a mobile device which can connect either to one or the other location and then feed back to the grid. It's all only defined for. Or the core of it is defined for a stationary device for feeding from a generator energy to the grid, or maybe also from a battery, which is in a home for PV peak shaving, then adopting the energy according to the demand on the grid. So this is somewhat described and being done quite well, but we have a mobile device which is driving around and can connect to different connections to different grid operators with different regulations. So this is, if you talk specifically about Germany, it's even more diversified. France, for example, has one grid operator. In Germany, we have several hundred grid operators, and they, in a lot of cases, have individual rules about how to connect to the grid, and that's something what takes time. But I think it's understood also from the regulatory and from the political side, but it really needs time, and that's different in the different countries. And after all the topics of issues, but I can also maybe highlight something where it's working. And for example, Netherlands have a very easy solution on that. They just have a energy meter which just goes in the plus direction if you feed back to the grid, and the minus direction if you take energy, and then you just pay the balance at the end of the month what you have taken from the grid. And that is quite easy. Maybe it's not the best way to do if you have a huge grid to take care of and too many are connected to, but that's just idea what is possible if you really want to make such a solution and get rid of some regulations in the background.
Now, you mentioned already the Netherlands with having a specific individual approach. So what variations are there within Europe? Because I guess the grids are also very different in Europe. You also mentioned, France having one grid operator, Germany having several hundreds. So which specific countries rather have a grid challenge, which have a regulation challenge, or which ones are already ahead in all of these fields?
Yeah, I would say the countries where we unified grid solution like France or also Netherlands is quite easy because they have a good alliance between the grid operators, which is ELAT, which is very much supporting these activities. It's also a question of political support you get in the different countries. So I can't really state which one is on what level because it's quite, again, diversified. Yeah, some countries we have a lot of grid operators which have to be aligned. Some have quite tight regulations because they have some unstable grids with a reduced ability to power back into the grid, or you have in some regions a bit less political support on that, or you have, like also in Germany, we have some additional rules like the Eichrecht, a very famous one. Everyone in the charging industry knows about Eichrecht because it's a very special requirement only in Germany, and all these things have to be clarified and discussed, and that's, I think, still a big challenge. But I see quite good push now also from the industry by having solutions ready, and there's also a French car maker has another car on the road which is also capable of doing that with the AC bidirectional charger, and that's somehow also paving the way and showing okay, it's possible, and also other car makers making these offer for DC bidirectional charging, and as more this is visible, as more it's clear, okay, this is working, everyone has to work on that.
Now, earlier you already mentioned ISO 15118. Maybe for those of us who are not familiar with it yet, in just a sentence, what is it about? And then a little bit with more details, how critical is it for making bidirectional charging a success in Europe, and how are you actually coming into play with CharIN?
Yeah, the ISO 15118.
That way around. 15118. Okay.
Either way we can say it. This is one of the key enabler for all future function, or this is the key. Yeah? Because this is the standard for the communication protocol between charger and electric vehicle. And this is necessary in the first step, in the beginning, for just the ability to have a safe DC charging ability, and also with higher power. You need to have their intelligent communication because the external charger has to adapt to the battery voltage level and support in appropriate way the vehicle battery with the amount of electric energy and current on the appropriate voltage level. So this was a basic start for this communication protocol, but with that protocol, it was also already included that it has additional functions, and also the new revision, like it calls 15118-20 version. This is enabling a lot of other functions, including the ability to be bidirectional and also to have the additional services being communicated between EV and charger, and all the other way around. Like you can also then communicate what the vehicle or the vehicle battery needs as energy over what time, or what is the time when the customer wants to have a full charge or a charge car to a certain amount of range. And this is also supporting the customer in regards of his comfort, how he can use and how seamless he can use a car, no matter if it's just charging or bidirectional charging.
All right, so that's 15118. Now, if you look you already said earlier, in France, there's one car manufacturer who has a quite interesting vehicle out there already. How is it looking with European car manufacturers in general? We mentioned Volkswagen earlier already. Are they positioning themselves more as like pioneers? Are they lagging behind? How is the competitive field looking like? globally if you stack Europeans against Chinese manufacturer or American manufacturers?
So regarding implementing the ISO 15408-20 communication protocol, which is a key for successful and comfortable bidirectional charging, I think the German OEMs are very well on the appropriate level. Also, the French are making quite good progress to bring that into their vehicles. It's less common, to be honest, in US, but in the meantime, there's also there a push from federal side to also implement a common communication protocol. So although they are now on the level to implement that. So this is quite a good shape. Regarding Chinese, it's a Chinese are in their country, they're doing a completely different standard. But for sending the cars over to Europe and US, they are somehow prepared, not on the same level as the European car makers. But I think they also have a clear vision on implementing these functionalities very soon.
Oh, interesting. So that means also in reverse that if European manufacturers want to go into the Chinese market, they have to adapt to the Chinese standard?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. China is a closed country, let's say, regarding the charging standard. You have to have the Chinese charging standard to be able to just bring the car into the country. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a GBT, which is somehow an early adoption of the previous development of the CCS. But it's a completely different communication.
What a headache for your fellow CTOs amongst the car manufacturers.
Yeah, it is. And also Japan still sticks to their Shademo cars, but I heard some rumors they are now also opening up maybe.
Yeah.
So this can be also potentially unified, but the rest of the world beside the Japanese and Chinese market is all connected to the CCS standard and is also then in favor of using the ISO protocol and also using with the protocol the ability for the additional services and also bidirectional charging, and also potentially in future automated charging and wireless charging and so on.
You said that the rest of the world is focusing on ISO 15118. That's great news because I guess cooperation is really the key on moving forward fastly. So how well is the cooperation working between the various stakeholders, for example, OEMs or grid operators, etc.?
Yeah, we already see a lot of collaborations and direct collaborations to find a solution, sometimes for a dedicated local region or market, but also for a solution which are somehow front runner for the rest of the industry by having somehow part solutions being available for the customer so they can then really see what's possible and that's very promising also for the general market.
Now, I guess bidirectional charging has benefits, but different benefits depending on your role, whether you're a consumer, a grid operator, if you're part of the OEMs or broader industry. So how do these different stakeholders benefit in their own specific way?
Very different. Even the grid operators have to be diversified between the local grid operator and the transition grid operator for the long distance, because the local grid operator have to handle in the local grids the peaks like they also have to do with the photovoltaic and then the PV energy going to the grid. And this is for them a challenge. Yeah? And for them, just bidirectional charging without a control in correlation to the grid capacity, that's a risk for them. So they are focusing on how to control what energy is going through their grids. For the transition grid operator, it's more the question how we can support local demands on the energy side. Yeah, and for the energy industry, it's also a question how the energy market is looking like, yeah, and a lot of companies from the energy sector are now in this market for bidirectional charging or grid support. So we also call it vehicle to grid, so V2G, and that's for them is a big market potential, what they want to also achieve. But it must always be in cooperation with the consumers and with their cars. So also the car industry is in the need to do all the technical interconnections, not only for the charger to vehicle side, but also to the back ends to get the informations across the grid operators and also to the energy aggregators, how we call it. So these aggregators are then in the role to define at what time what charge or discharge shall be done to be good for the grid and also being optimized for the energy what you want to charge in the car. Because we, like I mentioned at the beginning, We do all that stuff to be able to get the physical renewable energies in the cars, trucks, buses to be really CO2 neutral. That's the ultimate goal, which is necessary to achieve here.
A minute ago, you mentioned that you also have to tie in consumers. Now, they might benefit from, for example, participating in very small business cases of feeding energy back, etc., or just charging at the right point in time, etc. But usually when you ask people, they're either scared that their warranty will be cancelled, or just simply their car battery is not suited to serve as storage for the grid, and then their lifetime quality decreases. Are these typical concerns that we still have to cater to, or is it just urban myths?
I like to get this question because that's really one of the key concerns from customers, or also in some parts of the industry, because it's not really true. If you see it in comparison to what's happening today, typically, you get back home, you plug your car in, you go to bed, next day you stand up, you unplug it, you drive. That's the worst what you can do for your car, not bidirectional charge, because then the car is typically charging immediately. It's not good for the grid because that's the time when everyone comes home, everyone is having energy demands. But then the car stays for the whole night at full charge. That's not good for the battery. So bidirectional charging, yes, it is additional load on the battery, but on a much, much lower power level. So this is much less stress for the battery than normal driving. Yes, the OEMs have their warranty topics on that, so they are calculating on that. But I don't see that as an issue because if it's allowed to do so, you also get information about what you can do to be still in the way or in the area for your warranty for your car. But at the end, I'm totally sure about that. If you only do controlled charging with or without bidirectional charging, you're always treating your car battery better than without.
Okay, that's quite interesting to hear. So also no concern that just the sheer number of cycles is a problem.
Yeah, exactly. It depends under what condition the cycles are happening. Yeah, as higher the current or higher the power of the cycling, as more stress. But it's also related to the SOC level from the battery. And normally you can control this SOC level during this bidirectional mode in the range where it's appropriate to do so.
So how do you see the market evolving then over the next 5 to 10 years? And if it's developing, so which specific solutions will make the difference?
So regarding the charging technology, the DC is already in the market. Yeah, so you can charge DC with a lot of available cars in the market. But for today, it's a quite expensive technology. But on the long term, I see this as a big potential because the real pure material cost should be much lower than what is offered in the market right now. So there's also a chance of cost reduction quite heavily. For the AC, there's also abilities that the car can not only directly feed back to the grid, but also can support you with it called vehicle to load. So you have something like a electric chainsaw or a refrigerator when you are in your weekend home in the forest or whatever. So this is also additional functionalities which already be offered, which then are much more enabled in different cars.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you see the market as such evolving? Do you have some numbers or predictions?
If you talk to the aggregators, which are then taking care of the energy getting in the grid, back to the grid, and about what time it will be done, it's really huge, quite a big €1 billion number per year if you talk about Europe, for example. But this is still a bet on that. It's for sure a huge market, but if everyone is doing it, it's also somehow like it's more a daily business. And then the grid is stabilized and also the energy is stabilized. But I see it a bit more from the long-term perspective. If you have more and more renewables in the grid, you must have some benefits for the customer to also have then the later adopter of electric cars who are less confident in the technology also to bring their car into the grid as support, because we need all these batteries of these cars and also additional stationary batteries to really have a stable energy support in the different countries if we have such a high amount of renewable energies, what we want to achieve regarding the Fit for 55 plan from the European Commission.
Now, of course, economically, let's be honest, we look also at dire times ahead. We don't know what the trade war between the US or the EU will turn out. So one possible step is to look into evolving markets, and another one is simply saving money for dire times. And it just happens so that apparently bidirectional charging, according to a study published by Transport and Environment, could be a huge, huge money saver for the next 10 years. They're talking about 100 billion euros saved through 10 years simply by implementing bidirectional charging in the EU. How realistic do you think these figures are?
I'm not sure about the numbers, but it's for sure a huge business. And on the one hand, it's really necessary to stabilize the grid if you have more and more renewables in. But on the other hand, it's already a business for the customers who have their own photovoltaic on their roof, and they can completely be independent from the grid source, let's say. So they are really benefiting. And if you see that on a much bigger scale, if more and more people have their photovoltaic and they also use it locally for their house or for their car and can also feed back from the car into their own house. So this is, if you multiply that by all the cars and houses in Europe, so this is really a big impact what you can do. But today
Who is saving the money then? Is it grid operators, or which money is being saved exactly? Is it end consumers with their actual energy bill? In which spot of the value chain do you think we actually are saving money?
At the end, it's the customer who's saving, because today the customers are also paying for the grid balancing between, for example, the coast areas where they have the windmills and the south areas where the industry is, if you look, for example, into Germany. And this is being paid by the grid costs. So it's always going back to the customer at the end. And sometimes the customer can benefit directly, like I mentioned, with a photovoltaic stored in their car, or they can indirectly because the overall grid is less cost intense, and also we need less gas power plants to fill the gaps when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining. So it's really a total cost perspective you have to look at, and in some areas the customers can even more benefit on because they are using it personally or they are part of the system, or the other consumers are also benefiting if some are doing that because the overall grid costs and energy costs go a bit down.
Now, what would be the one thing to really tap into that potential? That one thing you think, if we focus on anything, that's the key priority to really make these cost savings and the promise of bidirectional charging to make it true in the next 5 to 10 years?
Digitalization. We need to have all these loads and sources and also the grids be in a digital environment, data cloud, whatever, where all these informations are being put together and being able to be analyzed and used for controlling the loads and the sources in the grid. And today we also have heard that there's a political interest to change the price depending for the industry if they are following a guidance from the energy sources, let's say, or from the energy market. If the wind is blowing and the sun is shining with the photovoltaic energy, then they shall open up their processes and use the electric energy, or when it's not, they shall not. But then we also need to have this on a bigger scale, and then it's also supporting everyone.
So digitalization and making our grids and applications or systems smarter, I suppose. Thanks a lot for joining me today, Michael.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for the questions and for the talk today.
Find out more at the Power to Drive Europe conference, which takes place from 6th to 7th of May 2025 at ICM International Congress Center in Munich. As one of the 4 conferences of the Smarter Europe, you can learn about all facets of the new energy world and discuss with all sorts of leading experts from the energy industry. Please find the conference link in the show notes.